Hey, to see you. You have to unmute yourself. You're muted.
Hey
Oh, there you
Nate,
go.
I just
How you
unmuted myself.
doing?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Great seeing you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Doing well. I can't complain.
How's the new house?
Good. We've just finished up unit one and working on getting the tenant out of my unit so that I can get working on that one as well.
So unit one, there was a tenant and they just left, or
They left prior to the close.
had they been there for a while?
Yeah, a few years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they left prior to close, which was real nice. Um, and then the other tenant isn't out yet. I gave him a 30-day notice, which ended March 1st. But I mean, there's not really much I could do right now. So they're being cooperative though. They're being good and working on getting out. What's up, Mark?
How are ya?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Doing good, thanks.
Good.
Surviving my calls.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So tell us about what kind of lease do you use, Nate?
Well, the unit one that I just finished renovating, my brother moved into that one, so there's no lease.
Awesome.
Yeah, so he's just gonna move right in. But
And
I
he's
will.
paying you rent?
Yeah, yeah.
And no written, nothing written?
No, doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to be. We're like best friends. I mean, we lived together prior to him moving into that unit, so he's good for it.
Okay. Did you do kitchens and baths? Did you do the whole thing?
I did new kitchen. Bathroom I changed a lot, but I didn't do like completely new. I kept the shower just because it was an odd configuration, and in order to change the shower, I'd have to change all the plumbing and everything, so it just wouldn't work. So I kept the shower, and then I kept like the majority of the configuration, but then I blew out a wall and moved it back so that I could put the washer and dryer in there. So I added that in, and then it was a studio unit, and I just turned it into a one bedroom. It's like a perfect little one bedroom unit. I love it. My brother's super pumped. He loves it too. But put the laundry
That's
in and
awesome.
yeah. So
Sounds
then
wonderful. So how
yeah.
about square footage?
So his is probably about, I would guess, 800, 700, something like that.
If it's 700, that's a good size.
Yeah, it is. It is good size. Like the bedroom's big, the living room's big.
And it was a studio prior?
Yeah, it was a massive studio. They just never put up the wall or created a bedroom. They're like, we just didn't see the use to it, but there's definitely a use because I'll get much more rent for it now.
Yeah.
And if you go to sell it,
Yep.
how
Yep.
they plan on doing that since you just bought it. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I plan on holding it long term, but I mean, I could at this, like once I finish up my unit and renovate that, I mean, I could turn around and sell it for a nice profit for sure. Just because I got it at a good price, and the market's just crazy right now. Like I just saw a two-family pop on in Abington for 500,000, and it's like that's only a two-family. It's two bedrooms, so
what
mine's a
street are
three.
you on?
Right on Bedford Street, so right on Route 18.
Oh, see, you're not far from me then. We're like
Oh,
right
really?
down. Yeah, I'm in Rockland, but it's like I'm right near like the Abington line, like the railroad tracks or like the cellar.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you are close to me. You're like if you pass Abington Pizza and you keep going straight, I assume that's where you're at.
A-hop. Yeah.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. All right. Well,
Nice.
I don't know if anyone else is coming in. I'm gonna oh, there we go.
Here we
Hey
go.
Justin.
Hey, what's up, Justin?
What's up, guys?
Chilling, man. All right. I'm gonna get it started. I don't see the waiting room. It says like if there's people waiting in the waiting room, but it'll just let you guys all right in. So I'm assuming that's not a thing anymore, maybe. But I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I am going to pull up a little PowerPoint that I created this morning quickly. All right. Okay. So this class is working with investors. So, I mean, there's a lot of agents in our office that work with investors. There's a lot of agents in our office that are investors. I've worked when I first got started in real estate, the first company I worked with, they taught me a lot about working with investors. That was kind of the main focus. So doing condo conversions on multifamilies and things like that. And it's always been something that I've been interested in anyway, because I just love the investment aspect of real estate. So something that I've dove into more and built a lot of relationships with flippers and buy and hold people and different things like that, just over time, just keeping in touch with them. Um, so just going to give you a quick kind of rundown of everything. So the types of investors, at least that I've dealt with, there's definitely different types of investors other than these four, but these are the ones that I've dealt with. So there's the fix and flippers. Those are the people that are buying rundown houses, building them up, making them nice, selling them for a nice profit. Then there's the buy and hold. Those are people that usually are looking for multifamily properties, or people that are trying to do Airbnb or different things like that, where they're planning on holding it long term. And then I put like selling off portfolio. So this is someone that's already been a long-term investor that owns a bunch of properties, and they're just looking to retire. They just want to get rid of their portfolio. Those are awesome people, just because they're, if they give you their whole portfolio to sell, it's obviously very nice. You get multiple listings, and if it's in the Boston area, you're selling them for a high price point. Developers is one that I haven't worked with much. A great person actually to talk to about development is Steve Zaboski. He knows a ton about it and does a ton of it. But development is a great opportunity. And this one, it definitely takes a little more hustle, I would say, the development aspect. I'll jump into that in a little bit, why I say that. But that's a great piece of business as well, if you can get into the development world. So have any of you guys ever worked with any investors at all? No, not yet. Okay, cool.
Yes,
You have to see it? Okay,
yes.
awesome.
I got another one through an open house on Saturday, so.
Nice. Yeah, those relationships are really awesome to just cultivate. I mean, right away, they might not give you properties to sell or anything like that. You definitely got to show your worth to them. But once you cultivate those relationships, they're awesome. You'll get a ton of referrals from them because they're just in the real estate world and they know people that are buying and selling all the time, and people are always asking them questions about it and whatnot. So like I have a friend of mine who now is a friend. I first met him through an investment, and we've just stayed in contact, and he's a good source of deals throughout the year. He sends me a ton of referrals, and just himself doing flips, things like that. But we've ended up cultivating a great relationship, and now we talk regularly just as friends, just about family and different stuff like that. So they're great relationships to have for sure, business wise, and they work for themselves as well. So it's always nice to have another friend that you can go golf with or whatever on on the weekdays. So as for fix and flips, the most important part is finding property for them, finding the right property. I mean, you see stuff pop on the market, and right now it's challenging because people are bidding $50 to $100,000 over asking price. So it's hard to really get an investment out of that, because they're pricing it at a certain point and it's just way going above what it should right now. So it makes it tough when it's on market properties. But finding the right property for them means just basically the right price. Any property is worth buying at the right price. And I always say that so for instance, when I used to do expireds and stuff a lot, I would always talk to them and be like, look, like because any property that I come to, I can guarantee I can get them an offer for the property. Without a doubt, I can guarantee it. I don't always say that because my offer is not going to be probably what they want, but you can always guarantee it when you're working with investors, because they'll buy any property as long as it's worth it. You know what I mean? So if there's a $500,000 house and nobody's willing to buy it, an investor, of course, would buy it for 200,000. You know what I mean? So there's always there's always opportunity when working with them, and it's also kind of looking at that outside of the box when you look at the properties, like what you could do to it. So giving them advice, giving the investor advice on the area, types of finishes, things like that. So if they're flipping a property in, say, Fall River, for instance, you're probably not going to do high end everything, granite countertops, all that stuff. You just kind of spruce it up a little bit, and you want to give them advice on that. And we're the experts; we're supposed to know those kinds of things. So, if they're flipping a property in Newton, for instance, you're going to want the top end of everything. Those are the things you want to look at. You want to basically look at what's going to get them the most money for the money they put into it. And sometimes there's properties you can go in and basically just clean it up, maybe do small little updates, and then just go sell it for a quick profit. They probably won't make as much on it, but they're only going to spend 3 weeks on it instead of 3 months, so it might be more worth it to them to be able to do that. And then looking at ARV. So ARV is after repair value. So, and if I get talking too much and you guys have any questions, just stop me. ARV is after repair value, and what this is basically after they do everything, after they do the renovations, what's the value going to be? And that kind of goes back to what's more beneficial. Is it more beneficial for them to just do quick little updates, nothing too fancy, and get it back on the market quickly? Or is it worth it for them to do all the bells and whistles, make it look really good, and put it back on the market? So we're the ones that should be telling them that what they can get for what they should expect when they put it on the market. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, this is like the bottom line, what you're going to get, because I want to make sure that they don't get into an investment where they're now breaking even at the end after 3 months worth of work. So I always tell them, like, this is the bare minimum. What's your construction costs, so that we can look at the numbers from there, so we can see what your profit will be. I'm going to go into that in a second, but and then looking at highest and best use of the property. So this is something you don't see as much for single family, although sometimes you will. But say, for instance, in the Boston area, you're looking at a 2-family property, and all surrounding it is a bunch of 3 and 4 unit properties. This goes more into zoning. This is something that you'll want to dig into more. This is a whole separate class, but highest and best use of the property. Can that 2-family potentially be a 4-unit condo building? And if so, what does it take to be able to do that? What approvals do you have to go through? What's basically, you want to figure out what's the zoning for that property, and is it possible with the amount of land that there is? Can you put 4 units there? Or 3 units, or whatever it is. And then same thing goes for single family. If you're looking at a single family property, but yet there's all multifamilies all around it, the chances are that area is zoned for multifamily. So you just need to, at that point, make sure that there's enough land, because they need a certain amount of frontage, rear, side, all that. So you need to make sure there's enough land on the property to be able to convert that into a multifamily. Again, that's definitely a whole separate class. There's a lot to that. But it's something that would be well worth learning, because if you can say you're working with an investor and he goes to buy this single family, and you're like, hold on, wait, you might be able to put a 2-family here, and you get him to be able to put 2 condos and he doubles his profit on it. I mean, he's going to be very appreciative of that, and the best part is you're going to be selling 2 condos instead of just 1 single family. So definitely something that would be worth diving into. Again, that would be a whole nother class, and probably not one that I should teach, because I don't know it all that well. I know the gist of it, but not in the depth of actually having the experience of doing it myself. So, and then, do you give advice on the building code, and if they want to expand the property? So for me, I will give the advice to the extent that I know. I will not overstep that, because I don't want them to make a decision based off of information that I've given them that is not correct. So I always tell all the investors, any investor I work with, like, you need to do your due diligence on this, go to town hall, go figure out what you can do. But I'll give them ideas. So, like, for instance, we're looking at a ranch property, say it's sitting on like an acre of land. I will give them the kind of like advice to go look into, can you put a second floor on this? Can you expand it back, because we're sitting on so much land? There's no need for that much land for a small 1,000 square foot ranch. Why not make it 2,000 square feet? And have them kind of go into it. If I know the rules of the town, I'll definitely tell them that, and tell them to still go look into it. But every town's different. So like there's certain towns where they want a full acre of land to be able to build a property, and you'll have to take like pieces of another, like it can get tough in that aspect. So every town's different. You want to definitely dig into that specific town. Don't suspect that or don't expect that a town like Norwell is going to be the same as Boston or Braintree or any other town. So you definitely want to dig into individual towns on that. Um, and you can always just, that's easy stuff. You can always just go to the town hall and just literally ask questions. Go to the building department, go to the zoning department, and just ask them questions. They're there to help us. We pay taxes, we pay their salaries. They're supposed to be helping us. So don't ever be afraid to just go to town hall and just ask them questions. And then what to expect when you bring an investor the property. So for me, anytime I bring an investor a property, a flip, or anything like that, I try to get. So I'll always expect to sell it on the back end when they flip it, and that's a conversation I'll always have with them. And I think most people that flip properties expect that the realtor that brings them the deal is probably going to be the one selling the deal as well. Um, when I first got into it, I had a partner in early real estate, and we were working with an investor, and I had an off-market property, 2-family in a great part of Dorchester, and we basically brought this guy through, and we were like, hey, so here's this 2-family. Tell us what you think. We can get the seller to sell it for X price. The condo price over here is, I mean, it was a great flip. He was going to sell it for like 4 something, 2-family in Adams Village, and you can get 600 to 700 per condo in that area. And we're like, basically, what are you willing to do for us? So we're going to give you this flip. And he was like, well, I actually have another 3-unit building that I'm just doing right now in Savin Hill. So we got the listings for that 3-unit building, and then we got the listings for the 2 condos in Adams Village as well. Just because we're bringing him deals and we're cultivating that relationship, we're expecting the same thing in return. Don't always think that kind of like they have the higher hand, like the upper hand on us, because we're the ones that bring all the deals. We're the realtors. We're the ones that usually see the deals before everyone else. And then as for their responsibility, go ahead.
Nate?
Yep.
Yeah, so what is the percentage when you do that? Are you building a long-term relationship and they expect it at 4%? Or do you go in at full 5? How do you do that? How do you handle that?
It really depends on the investor. I always try to go for the 5. However, some are not going to go with it. They're just not going to do it. They'll say, no, we'll do 4. We're giving you all these deals or all these properties. We'll give you 4. And in that case, I mean, honestly, I'm totally fine with it at that point. Like if I'm going to be doing 5 transactions with them a year, it's better than trying to push for the extra 1% and them not bringing me another deal, So I always still try to go for the 5, and you can get away with it sometimes for sure, especially if you're the one bringing them the deal. But if they're bringing you the deal, probably they're not going to do for 5, most likely. And then their responsibility. So when I'm looking at the property with them, I do a quick walkthrough with them, and basically I look at, okay, what can we talk about what we can do with this property. Okay, we can make it, we can turn this 3rd bed, we can make a 4th bedroom here. We could add a master suite, whatever it is. We talk about all the things that we can do to it and that we're going to need to do to it, meaning heating system, if it needs a new roof, if it needs new siding, all those things. And what the expectations of the area is. So if you're selling, like I talked about earlier, just kind of the finishes for the property, what the expectations are. And then their responsibility is to come up with the total cost of renovation and the holding cost. So usually, so total cost of renovation, they're going to add up all of the things, because they know that better than I do. They're contractors. Usually they know what it costs to put a new kitchen in. They know what it costs to put a new heating system in, all that stuff. So they'll run those numbers. And then the holding costs. So holding costs is usually your interest on the money, because usually people aren't buying it cash out of their pocket. They're using a hard money loan, which is high interest. So it's like 10%. a month usually, or 10% interest rate. So that is a significant amount. And they'll usually do, like one of the guys I work with, he usually will do, he needs 20% down for the total purchase and construction. So 20% down for total, but the then lender will pay for the 80% of the purchase of the property and 80% of the construction of the property. Um, all hard money lenders are different. I mean, if you or I have $1 million in the bank, we could be hard money lenders. It's just private money. That's all it is. So
And
total
Nate,
holding
what
cost.
we should all
Go ahead.
inspire for.
I'm sorry.
I said, that's what we should all inspire for,
I
because
agree.
that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And think about all the knowledge that we have as opposed to, other people.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree with you. So after they look at their total renovation costs, total holding costs, and then we look at what they're going to be able to purchase the property for, what is the seller going to sell it for? We then take that total amount and then we look at what's the property worth after repair, after renovation. And basically then they can figure out their profit and if it's worth it to buy the property or not. And I think it's very important to have a large pool of investors, flippers. You can definitely have your main few that you go to first. The people that you've built those relationships with. Like I go to my buddy that I was just talking about first. He gets, anytime I find a property that's off market or a good deal, I bring it to him first, and then after he sees it, and if he declines, then I'll bring it to another guy, and I'll try to get it to an investor first before I put it on the market. If the seller wants that. I mean, obviously that's totally up to the seller, but a lot of times selling to investors can be a benefit to them because they can just leave all the crap in there. Say a family member passed away and there's tons and tons of stuff in the house. Instead of them having to clean it out and put it on market, you could just sell to an investor. The investor will take over everything with all the crap in there if it's at the right price, obviously. And they'll remove everything themselves. So it can be a big benefit to sellers as well. So it's nice to have that pool of people. And some deals aren't right for some people and some deals are better for others. You know what I mean? Because they might see a vision that other people can't see, whatever it is. So that's why it's important to have multiple. All right. So buy and hold. Okay. So buy and hold is an investor that is going to hold the property long term. They're looking for either cash flow, equity, or just a place to put their money. And that could be someone that has a bunch of money that's just doing nothing, sitting in the bank account. And they just want to invest in something because they know that the property value is going to go up. They know that they'll be able to sell it in a few years and be able to make some money off of it, or just even if it stays balanced, at least they'll collect a little cash flow or something. So it's all about finding the property, make the numbers work. So when you're looking at multifamily properties, you're working with an investor, you want to look at the property as to make sure that, say they're looking for cash flow, then you want to look at total expenses, you basically just want to look at the net operating income. So what the expenses are versus what the income of the property is, and make sure that there's a cash flow that they're looking for, and whatever percentage that is. Some people are looking for a 5% return, 10% return, whatever it is. You just want to make sure that their cash flow is positive and that they're able to make money off this property if that's what they're looking for. Every investor is different with that. You're going to, some like just see a potential area. They know it's going to go boom soon, so they don't care if they're barely making any cash flow. Some people are investing in places like the lower end places, or lower, I guess, property value places like Fall River, New Bedford, the Worcester area, because the cash flow is way better. So they're going to make a lot more money on their money. So that's definitely something that you want to be able to look at the numbers, and it's pretty simple. And NOI also, so that's just, NOI is total gross income of the property minus expenses, and that's not including the mortgage, because it wouldn't make sense if you used mortgage, just because the mortgage can be different for all people, depends on your interest rate, depends on your percentage down, all that. So Obviously, if they are using a mortgage, you want to make sure that you can help them with that, see what their monthly payment's going to be on it, and be able to look at, okay, well, you'll still make $500 a month, whatever it is. And then help them figure out potential realistic rents for the property. So, for instance, they buy a building that's been occupied by the same people for the last 20 years. Say it's a 3-unit building and all the tenants have been there for 10 to 20 years. The rents are going to be significantly below market value. So at that point, what I would look at is, okay, what is the potential rents right now as the unit stands? If there was no updates done, what could you get for the unit? And then I would look at, okay, if you did X, Y, and Z renovations, say you put a new kitchen in, new floors, whatever, made it nice, this is what the potential rents are going to be. And why I say realistic is because I don't want to tell them, you can definitely get $3,000 a month for this, but it's going to be like a stretch to get that. And it's going to sit on the market for 2 months waiting for tenants. It's more important to get those units filled than to have them sit on the market, because think about it like this. Say you can either get 2,600 a month or you can get 3,000 a month. If you wait those 2 months, you're losing potentially $6,000 or $5,000 in rent. So it's not really worth it to try to push it. You kind of want to just get them rented quick at first and then get it going, especially when they first buy it, because they just put money into it. They usually just renovated it, things like that, and they need the cash flow to start coming in. And then again, if they're going to renovate the property, help them with the finishes. Again, same kind of thing. If they're investing in an area that's lower income or lower property value, their rents are only like $700-800 to $1,000 a month versus here in Boston where they're like $2,000 to $3,000 a month. The finishes are going to be different. The expectations of the tenant are going to be different. So in those lower areas, you might use like linoleum countertop or just the regular older countertops. Nothing too fancy. You don't need to do granite. You don't need to do hardwood floors, anything like that. However, you're then looking at a different area, say the South End or Boston or Dorchester, different parts of Dorchester, or Savin Hill, like that area. You're going to want to do the more high end. You're going to want to do the granite countertops and the nice flooring and all that stuff, because the expectation is higher for the tenants. If they're looking to pay $3,000 a month for a 3-bedroom, it needs to be nice. It needs to be updated. They're not going to pay that for a dump of a property or super outdated. If they're looking for equity in the property, so when I say equity, I mean just the value rising, basically. So what you want to do is, what I do at least, is look at the 5-year trend, what the past 5 years have been. However, obviously that does not tell us what the next 5 years are going to be. So definitely be careful with that and explain that to them. Like, what the past 5 years is probably, maybe it will be the next 5 years, but personally, I doubt it. But show them the expectations of what they can expect if it was to continue the way that it's been trending for the last 5 years. Again, that more just depends a lot on area. The inner Boston area is pretty insulated when it comes to market corrections. It's the property value is definitely going to drop, but it's not going to drop as much as, say, somewhere like Middleborough or somewhere that's just like not extremely desirable to live because there's not as many businesses. Boston has a ton of businesses, schools, and lots of things to kind of insulate property and property value. It will still fluctuate, but it'll fluctuate less, I would say. Any questions on that at all, guys?
Nate, I got one real quick. If you want to do the 5-year trend, what's the easiest way to do that?
That's a good question. So you can pull it up. You can usually just literally Google what the past 5 years have been. And you can search that. Obviously you want to search by zip code, but there's certain websites, I can't remember what they're called right now. But there's websites that literally will do this. They'll show you the population growth, the property value growth, the income growth, and in crime rate. It'll show you everything, all the statistics. If you type it into Google, search down past the ads and stuff, and you should be able to find it. There's a,
Okay.
I wish I could remember the name of it because it's a really good website for all that kind of information, and it's super helpful when, especially if, for instance, for yourself, if you're looking to invest in an area for like out in Western Massachusetts or something. It's really awesome for that because you can see the growth of the towns, because that's the most important. When I mean, in Boston, Boston's always growing, obviously, just because of schools and businesses and things like that. But outside in like the suburbs and the central to Western Mass, some towns aren't growing. You know what I mean? Some towns stay very stagnant over the past 20 years. And so not that it's a terrible place to invest if it's staying just steady, but it's probably not the best. You want like a 5 to 7% increase at least in growth to be able, like, that's when you know it's like, oh, that's a great town, especially if you're looking in other states and things, for property. Because if you're looking in other states, you're already going to have to travel far to do it. So you might as well find one that's got a great growth rate, because those are going to be the ones that are going to set you up good for the future for sure.
So I just want to give you a tip, and investors have given me. What they've done is to like try to figure out what's going on with the town. They go to the monthly meetings
That's
and
a
they
good idea.
figure out what's, what town, what are they projecting to do with this money? What are they going to do with the school systems? How are they going to get new businesses to come in? Like, are they expanding their hospital? Is the commuter rail coming in, whatever? And
Yep.
ahead of time, this might be a good town to invest in, because things are moving, as opposed to the next town over where you see that they're not on the ball.
Yep.
So
Yep.
maybe,
Totally agree with you there. I think that's a really good point too, because there's towns like I know I don't know if they ended up putting this up not or not yet, but they're trying to do. I know in Worcester they were trying to do like an MIT of Worcester, basically like a lab and tech institute where they can do a bunch of studies, different things like that. And obviously that around that area is going to blow up. You know what I mean? That's going to be a very it will be a much higher income people that are going to be working there and living in that area. So obviously that's gonna blow up. So if you knew that before it became like public knowledge, I mean, obviously it's public knowledge once you go to those meetings, but if you knew that prior to the news getting a hold of it and all that, like, you'd be able to buy those properties for much less than you could now. So you're right to see it. That's a great point.
just be careful, because whatever is proposed doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. So that's something you should keep in mind.
Definitely. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. So selling off portfolio, retirement. This is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, this is just like selling any other house, any other property. Hold on. Let me move that. Except for the owner is usually not emotionally invested, which is very nice. So they are just more money motivated, motivated. They just want to know what they can get for their property. I've worked with some that have been the easiest going, like, amazing transactions ever. I've definitely worked with one in particular that has been the most challenging client I've ever worked with. But he has like multiple multifamilies that he wants to sell in the Boston area, and so he's a pain in the ass to deal with. However, is it worth it? And that's kind of like the what you want to look at. However, most are going to be pretty chill. They're retiring. They just want to kind of get rid of their properties. They usually are pretty cool with you selling it off market if you have investors, different things like that. So it kind of works in both sides. You can reach out to those buy and hold people that you have and connect them. And then, but so say they have 10 properties in the same area that they want to sell. And they're giving you all the listings, hypothetically. When is a good time to put them all on the market? So you don't, at least personally, I don't want to put them all on at the same time. I don't want to flood the market with multiple multifamilies or similar properties, because it's just going to lower your buyer pool like crazy. So what I would do is stagger them. So get one under contract, throw another one, like get them all ready, but get one under contract, put another one on the market, get one under contract, put another one on the market. You could probably do a couple at a time, depending on how big the location is. But if say it's like they own one neighborhood, you probably want to stagger them and get them separated. And then just question on when they're selling them. Are they trying to do a 1031 exchange, or what are they doing with it? So if they're just selling them and just completely retiring and they're going to end up paying all taxes on it, great. Don't have to deal with anything. If they're doing a 1031 exchange, that is definitely a whole nother class. But they're relatively easy. They basically just need to have, I can't remember the name for it. It's basically like a middleman that holds the funds until you find the property that you're going to be buying. They have, if I remember correctly, 45 days to identify, 90 days to put something under contract, I believe. Identify means they see a property that they're interested in. Obviously, under contract means putting the property actually under contract. I think they can get extensions on this. I'm not too familiar with 1031s. I've done them in the past with clients, but they usually come to me when it's all like ready to go, and they're just like, hey, I'm doing a 1031. I just sold this property out in Western Mass. Can you help me buy something? And then I've worked with the middle person to be able to coordinate all that. But relatively easy. It's not a super challenging thing. I did actually work with a seller with it once, but he was buying something out in like another part of the country. So he was selling some multifamilies around here, and then he was buying something out in another part of the country. And all I had to do was, we just basically got to let the attorneys know, let everyone know, and they put it into the writing of the purchase and sale and all that, where the money's going and how it's going to get distributed and all that. And it goes directly to like, it's basically, like an escrow account in a sense. And I would say if you are interested in learning more about 1031 exchanges, maybe we can set up a class in the future, someone else that would be better at it to teach it. Or I would just start looking at, just either read something on it, or they can be a little challenging. And I actually probably should explain what a 1031 exchange even is, in case you guys don't know. Are you guys familiar with the term 1031 exchange?
They did a class on it in the last few months, but it was mostly over my head. I guess I understand what it is, but I guess I have to watch it again to understand how it works.
Okay, cool. So it's basically just deferring your taxes. It's not getting rid of your taxes, it's deferring them. So you can take it, you sell a property, say you have 200,000 in equity in the property, and you never lived in the property, so you can't get rid of the capital gains. So you're paying taxes on those capital gains. It's usually like 30 to 40%. What you can do is take the total amount of that, and you have to buy something that's equal or more value. It doesn't have to be equal or more units or equal or more size. It just has to be equal or more value. So you sell this property for $1 million. You paid 800,000. You have 200,000 in equity. You then would normally have to pay the 30 to 40% in taxes. Instead, you're going to roll that 200,000 into another property that's worth 1.1 million or $1 million. And it defers the taxes. You don't have to pay the taxes on that property, on that money yet. If you continue doing this, then you pull out, you are going to have to pay taxes. But I found out, I guess this was actually a couple of years ago, but when you're doing this, if say you are at the stage of retirement, but you don't want to sell your property, you want to give your property to your kids, you can go and die and pass those properties on, and they do not have to pay the taxes. So that deferred tax goes away once you pass. So it's kind of a nice little present for your kids, obviously.
So this is what I've read.
Mhm.
That this is generational wealth. This is how the wealthy do it.
Yep.
They don't pay taxes. They just keep doing 1031 exchanges. And I don't know all the nuances about it, but until they can give it to their kids, and then they're getting it without paying taxes.
Yep, exactly. It's
I
a
don't
beautiful
think a lot
thing.
of people it is a beautiful thing. I don't think a lot of people understand that.
I know, and it's such a benefit. just basically a loophole that it's not even a loophole. It's something that the government created because they want people to invest in real estate. They want people to have money. They want people to invest. And so it's just a way to, I mean, that's how, I mean, there's many reasons why Trump didn't really pay any taxes, but that's part of it. People like get mad when the rich people don't pay taxes and stuff, but it's because they know tax law and they know how to get around it. They know the loopholes. Do you give a cut on your commission? So, personally, I will never go below 4%. However, I will say it probably would be hard for me to walk away from if someone was like, I have these 10, 800 to $1.2 million properties that I want you to sell, but I want you to take 3.5% total for it. So I'm taking 1.5 and I'm giving out 2. It would be hard for me to walk away from that and tell them like, nope, not doing it unless you give me 4%. However, I will fight for that commission tooth and nail until it's at the point where they're like, all right, then bye, So do you give a cut on the commission? Usually when someone's selling a bunch of properties, they're not going to give you 5% on every property. Sometimes they will because they just don't know any better, or they just aren't being greedy and they just don't care, and they trust you and they want you to do the job. So they'll give you the 5%. So that's totally up to you. That's your own, whatever you feel comfortable with. I've never taken less than 4%. I shoot for 5 every time, but sometimes investors and whatnot will beat you up and will just, they won't go for 5. But I've never taken less than 4, even for friends and things like that. So just because I don't want to ever start that trend of, I hate when I see 2% on listings because I always try for 5, but you see it so often. And I've had to take listings for 4% as well because they just wouldn't budge. And they're like, well, I like everything about you, but if you can't go to 4%, then I'm going to go with this other person that will. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give up the listing for that. So obviously that's up to you, whatever you guys feel comfortable with.
So Nate, in our office, I don't think we're full service brokerage. I don't think we can accept anything other than 4%.
Yeah. I think 3 and yeah, that might be true. It might be 4. I know there is a level where you can't go past. I know.
I think there's one deal a year. There's like an extenuating circumstance where you're able to go under that 4%. I believe that's Alicia told me before.
Yeah.
Because my parents were talking about selling, and I obviously want to give them a cut. And she said, if you run it by, there's one deal a year. I think they'll let you do it for under 4.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, realistically, like they're gonna if you're. I mean, you can just talk to the office if it's a family member or something. Like I would never charge my brother commission. You know what I mean? If I'm going to sell his house, I would do it for free just to help him out. But that's because he's my brother and he's like one of my best friends. So I personally would talk to the office about that. However, when it comes to investors and stuff, I throw that line at them if they like keep trying to beat me up. I'm like, look, my office won't let me go below that. I'm sorry. Because there is a limit. I wasn't sure if it was 4% or 3.5%. I'll tell them, hey, if I get a direct buyer, I'll gladly take 3.5%, but otherwise it has to be 4, because chances are I'm probably not going to get a direct buyer. All right, on to the next one. So developers, I don't have very much experience with developers. So I would not be the best to kind of break this down for you. I'll give you just a little bit of an overview of the knowledge that I have on this. So with developers, the most important thing is finding the land that is buildable. You can find out through the town. So you can, working with developers is definitely, I would say, a lot more due diligence, just because you need to find out information from the town on what they can do with the property, what they can do with that piece of land, whatever it is. Because if you're just bringing a raw piece of land to someone and they're like, well, is this buildable? And you're like, oh, I don't really know. It's like, I mean, they'll still probably do the research to find out, but it's better if you can just come to them and be like, look, this is, I talked to the town already, like this can easily be approved for a single family property up to 1,800 square feet, whatever it is. And if you can give them that information, it's obviously more beneficial to them. My puppy's barking right now. So with that, the bringing them land is great. Bringing them a house that they can tear down and put a new property on, also awesome. Again, it kind of goes back to knowing the best use of that property and looking at the properties around it. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it, is just look at the properties around it. If it's this tiny little bungalow in the middle of a ton of big 2,500 square foot colonials, and it's enough, and it's the same lot size as the others, the chances are you're going to be able to put a 2,500 square foot colonial there. So it's really just kind of partially common sense, but it's also looking at, okay, what's the highest and best use, like we talked about with the flippers. The development is the same kind of thing with that, in the aspect of, if they're buying, say they're buying a 2-family to turn it into condos, again, look at what the highest and best use is for that. Go to the town, find out the zoning, find out how much frontage, rear, sidage, all that stuff that they need, how many units can go there. If you are going to change zoning, it is a lot more work than just being like, hey, so we're going to go put 4 units on this property. It's a lot more work than that. You have to go through an appeal process, through neighborhood. You have to have a neighborhood meeting usually, at least in Boston. I learned more about it in Boston than I did other towns. So this is my knowledge of it, but you have to go through like a neighborhood meeting and get approval from everyone. So you want to like send out a letter, all the neighbors, hey, I'm looking to build this property. Reason why some people would be like, no way, is because it can create more traffic and less parking. So the city of Boston, for instance, if you're building a new property, I believe it's a rule at this point that you have to have, I think it's 1 or 2 parking spots per unit, or it's like it's either that or it's like a half like 0.5 parking spots per bedroom or something like that, so there has to be a certain amount of parking spots, like underground parking per unit, or per something. I'm not exactly sure what it is, because
So
parking is.
right now,
Go ahead.
Nate, I live in Brighton.
Okay.
Across the street, they're tearing down a nursing home, and the developer's putting in 35 units, and he's got 35 parking spots.
Okay, cool. So it's 1 per unit then.
1 per unit, it seems like, what's it going? And then a block away, where there were gas stations, right now they've already started. They're gonna do 100-unit complex right there.
Wow.
I know. And then across the street, another 200-unit complex. This is all within a block of my house.
Damn.
Yeah.
You'd sell your house after they're all done.
Well, actually, what I'm thinking of doing, it's a 2-family, converting it into, a friend of mine's doing that,
Condos.
travel nurses. And travel nurses pay, right now she's getting $1,500 a bedroom. So she's got 3 bedrooms, making, yeah, 4,500.
Incredible.
And it's every 3 months, but it's furnished. It's 3 months furnished.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, people are willing to pay for that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And they usually have stipends. So my brother's girlfriend actually does that. She has a stipend, so she just rents. She gets, I don't know, crazy amount per month to be able, but she travels around the country and works in different places, and she gets a stipend every place she goes, where she gets paid. She can pay the rent out of that and food and all that stuff. And it's a pretty large amount, so they'll pay a little more than the average person.
You're a travel nurse?
It's not a nurse. She's like a vascular tech or something. I don't know.
But in the medical
She's
profession.
in the medical profession. Yeah. So be like those people and build those 200-unit properties, or get those developers as your clients. But yeah, so you want to look at highest and best use. You want to make sure that the property it's buildable. Make sure it's not on a wetland or a historical area, because usually the historical areas can be really tough. They're not going to let you tear down the house and put a new one up. They're going to want you to like renovate the house. Subdivide land. So you can subdivide land. So say someone has a 15-acre property and they're selling it. You can take that 15-acre property. You have to figure out how much acreage does each house need. But you can basically bring that piece of property to the developer and say, look, you can subdivide this for X amount of properties, and we can sell them for X price. You'll make a killing on this. And subdividing land is a good way to do it too. I know, I was talking to Zeb about this a little while back. He was talking about how he'll like look at a house and he'll see if they have like a ton of land that's like all wooded. He'll talk to the owner and be like, "Hey, would you be willing to sell part of your land to be able to basically develop it? I'll give you X dollars for it, and I'm going to put a property up there, you know." And then you want to show them examples of houses, new homes in the area, because you don't want to put, for instance, like, um, this kind of also goes back to flipping. Say you're there, you're at a ranch, and it's like you find a ranch that's a flip. You can just flip it, sell it as is. But if it's surrounded by a bunch of colonials, you're better off. You're going to make more money off of it usually if you can put a second level on that, turn it into a colonial. Um, so it's the same kind of thing. Look at the area. Look at what's being sold around there. If you find a piece of land in Hingham, for instance, you don't want to put just like a small house there. You want to put something that's large that can be sold for potentially 900,000, or $1 million. There's no use in. It's not going to cost much. Like, I mean, it's going to obviously cost more to build more house, but it's not going to cost. It's going to be more worth it. Like, you'll make a lot more money on it on the back end. So again, don't know. I haven't worked with too many developers, so definitely something that you should dig into more learning, and it can be a great opportunity for a lot of business though. I mean, I look at in Randolph. I live in Randolph right now, and I look at there's Todd A. Sandler. He's like the Randolph guy. I mean, you see him everywhere in Randolph, and he hang on, I'm just gonna stop sharing real quick. So he does all the new development. Like, he sells all the new development, and I mean, this guy crushes it around this area. I would imagine he probably doesn't even sell many non-new development properties because he has so many new development properties that he sells. So you could build your whole career off of that, off working with developers, finding them land, finding them property, and, you can get really good at it. So definitely something that would be worth learning more about and digging into more, because you can definitely do a lot with it. And something I mentioned briefly in the beginning, but cultivate these relationships. Every investor that you meet that comes to an open house that you have, and they're investor looking for a property that, ask them for the criteria, ask them to grab a cup of coffee, tell them that any properties that you find, you'll bring them their way, and just cultivate those relationships. You never know what will come out of them, and they are well worth it. They're well worth it, because it sucks when you get, for instance, like, I had a buddy just listed a property the other day, and he hit me up and he was just telling me about the property. I was like, "Oh, dude, that sounds like a perfect investment opportunity." But he didn't know any investors. So I was like, "Let me bring my investors by there." And like, we didn't end up putting anything together. It didn't quite work out. But like, if he had an investor pool, he could have easily double-sided that, then got to sell it again on the other side, so I was telling him, like, just every investor that comes to this property, because there's going to be a lot of them, because it's a rundown property, build relationships with them. Just talk to them and ask them for coffee, for lunch, pay for their lunch, and just have conversation with them. Just ask questions, be curious, don't be afraid to look dumb or ask questions, or, just be open, and just, they're going to want to work with you because, one, you have the knowledge, the real estate knowledge, but also just because they like who you are and they enjoy working with you, so don't be afraid to build those relationships, because they will be long lasting, important relationships in the real estate world, for sure. All right. That is the end of all the slides and everything. You guys have any questions or comments or anything?
I do quick. I recently met with Pat O'Donnell, and he is obviously an agent, but as well as an investor. He does the We Buy Ugly Houses thing. So he's a really good guy, because you can see it from both sides, right? So he sees it from the agent side, but he also sees it from the investing side. And he's a really good guy to, like, ask questions about, obviously, on that investing side. He, like I said, he sees it from both sides. So he's a wicked interesting dude too. So he was fun to sit down with. But yeah, he has a lot of good knowledge on stuff like that too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think
But
that's like the key to it too is knowing about investments. It gives you definitely an upper hand when talking to investors,
yeah.
because it's like you kind of you understand their world basically, so just learn about investments too. That'll help you because it'll also give you more confidence when talking to them. When I talk to investors about multifamilies and stuff, like I'm so passionate about that, and I've done so much extensive learning on it that like to me it's super easy for me to talk about it, and I get super excited when people want to talk about it. And so like I, I probably come off confident with the investor about it because I have a good amount of knowledge about, but I also am just super passionate about it. I enjoy talking about it. So it's like, it's not, it doesn't sound like I'm talking out of my ass.
So Nate, can you give us some type of foundation? Where should we start with podcasts? Who would you recommend?
Yeah, great question. So Bigger Pockets, I never got into it, but that's one that's good. One of my buddies loves it. So Bigger Pockets podcast is great if you want to learn about multifamily investing. That's a good name. Rod Cleef runs it. Hang on, I can look it up right now. It is Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. So that's a great one. And then there's Wheelbarrow Profits with Jake and Gino. That's another multifamily one. But Bigger Pockets is that's the where you're going to get like the broadest amount because it's Bigger Pockets. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, listen, it's unbelievable.
Cool. Yeah. So they have a great platform. They have a ton of free information for you, and the podcast ranges from all sorts of investing. So it's not going to be just flippers. It's not going to be just multifamily. It's going to be like everything, wholesalers to, and just developers to all different sorts of stuff. Anything that has to do with real estate investing. So that one's really great for learning at first because it'll kind of give you the full sphere of it. There's some books, like if you just look on Amazon and just read the reviews and stuff, but look up just like flip and fix, like fix and flips books or development books, different things like that. There's definitely good books on it. I can't remember any right off the top of my head right now. And then just simply looking at properties that are crappy and then comparing them to ones in the area that have sold, that are nice, and see what they sell for and see what the possibility is. And then try to run the numbers of what it's going to cost to do X, Y, and Z. A heating system is going to cost around like 10,000. A new roof, maybe depending on the size of it, 10 to 15,000, whatever it is. Try to run those numbers, and that can be helpful too, just literally writing down the numbers. And then for multifamily, same thing. If you look at multifamilies for sale, they'll usually have the expenses on it. They're usually much lower than what they really are, but you can get a rough estimate of the expenses and then factor in landscape and snow removal and all those kinds of things. And that will be a good way to be able to, start to learn how to run the numbers for your clients, for your investment clients. And I have clients that are buying multifamilies also that are just owner occupied, you know what I mean? But they still want the numbers to work, you know what I mean? So looking at a 2-family for 900,000 where they're getting $2,200 a month in rent doesn't really make sense if they're going to live in one unit. You know what I mean? They're only paying half their mortgage with the rent, and then plus all the other expenses. They might as well just go buy a single family, so like, running the numbers helps too. You definitely want to know that stuff. I highly recommend, if you want to learn about multifamily, Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I've literally listened to every episode. There's like hundreds of episodes, but I've learned so much about everything investment wise, like multifamily investment wise. So syndications and all that, 1031 exchanges, how to be able to get better tax write-offs. Like there's just so many different episodes of, just all that kind of stuff. And it's inspiring because there's like people that are just started 3 years ago and they have like 700 units, you know what I mean? And just because they have like people that they've connected with that have the money. So that's one I would really suggest for sure. Any other questions at all, guys?
Well, thank you, Nate.
This is awesome, Nate. I appreciate it.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much, Nate. That was wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. My
I don't
pleasure.
get why more people don't come to these classes, but
I know.
it never makes sense to
That's
me.
huge.
I know. I agree.
Super helpful.
I'm actually one of those people that sucks at I'll put the class in my calendar and then it's like halfway through and I'm like, oh no, I missed
I
it.
missed it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.